That's all good, that's all good. All right. Volume control. All right, good afternoon. Thanks for coming out on another lovely Sydney winter's day. All right, where are we up to? This week's lab has you writing as close as I could get to real shell scripts. I picked out a couple of tasks that... Okay, so playing with penguin pictures is not quite what you'll be doing maybe in future, but the programming patterns I think are pretty good matches for things you might be using shell for in the near future. And we even got you, if you try the, well, we got to play with some real data in the last exercise and the challenge exercise, including if you tackle the challenge part, you bump into Unicode issues. And you might say, oh, Andrew, that's a bad thing, you should just delete those funny characters. But no, in this course, I think it's just like in doing the Parliament one. You're bumping into people with weird letters after their name. This happens every time you start looking at real data. There are things you don't expect. And for the music, it's non-ASCII characters in band names. Who knew Bjork couldn't be... name is non-ASCII until you've tried this exercise. So that's all good. Oh, yeah, I have to apologise. Automarking real soon now. There's not much excuse for you not giving you last week's automarking already, but I'll get week 2 and week 3 automarking to you soon, though there normally will be a few days delay at least between the deadline and you getting the marking for it. Labs? No, everything's pretty good. Alex and Costa are doing a great job of asking questions in the course forum. I would suggest before tackling the week's labs that scanning the course forum for questions might be a worthwhile activity. I would encourage you to ask any sort of semi-relevant question in the course forum, but please check that the question hasn't been answered 20 minutes beforehand. Alex and Costa do get grumpy if you ask something that was someone asked just a few minutes ago and they gave a great answer to. And who can blame them? All right. I think that's all I've got to tell you. You got anything to tell me? No, we're all good? I guess we're all good. All right. So, course so far. We've done regular expressions, which are fantastic, really important in piles of language. Unix filters, which you can use embedded in programs or just on the command line. Really good thing to have in your tool set when you've just, you're looking, you've got a few logs to look through or some source code. You just want to find out a couple of things quickly. You can type up that, grep pipe, unique pipe, script sort, unique WC or whatever to find what you want. Fantastic. And as I said, we've just got the shell scripting. I'm sorry. We just have to leave shell scripting now. Actually, I might finish off last week's example, but today is Perl. Perl, and next week's lab is in off the deep end, Perl programming. So I better keep moving. No, that's not what I wanted to do. What I want to do is go. Just wanted to show you. Where do we finish off? Oh, we're actually in the editor when it. So what is this file here, by the way? .findbadstudents.sure.swp. Yep.
It's a temporary file under dip.
It's a temporary file. So I was editing it in Vim, VI, if you're as old like me, and the editor needs somewhere to store stuff that it doesn't need somewhere to store stuff. Well, I guess one thing what's there is so I can recover, and it can recover from that file. So it's a backup file, essentially, for the editor. Yeah. And it's been left behind because my laptop crashed with the stupid display drivers. Display drivers are just about the worst thing in the world. Do operating systems, and you'll know how to avoid having display drivers crash your kernel. And someone will get the message through to Linux eventually. So we came up with this program, which, all right, that's n squared. So if I've got 1,000 1511 students, it'll take 1 million comparisons. And there's a nice trick. If you look at the version on the website, you can change that a tiny bit, change that continue to a break, and it becomes half n squared. But that's still 500,000 executions, which seems a lot. Can you do it in a lower complexity? And the answer is sort of. We got to this version here where we checked to see if how much the differences was. If you don't have that, and you just want to know if the files are identical, we can do it in order n. How do you do that? Let's step away from plagiarism. Think, I've got a collection of files. I want to know, are any of them the same? So say I give you 1 million files and say, are the contents of any of these identical? Or tell me if the contents of these are identical. There's not actually a perfect solution, but someone was saying hash the files. What does hashing a file mean? Well, hashing data, it means reducing it to a single number. You're saying the files are all binary, effectively the number. That is true. A single number of extremely limited bits, say reducing all the files to a 64-bit number. If we can come up with an incredibly clever mathematical function that maps each file to a unique 64-bit number, then we can just compare the 64-bit numbers easily, can't we? We can sort them. And luckily for us, mathematicians have been there ahead of us. The famous one, which is now falling out of use, is the MD5 hash, but it will turn the files in this directory into a single number. It's complaining temp as a directory there, by the way, but it's reducing each file to a single number. There's a better one. I think there's at least SHA. Oh, I think I've probably got SHA 256 on this. Oh, there we go. Here's a slightly more secure one. And a slightly bigger number. But this is interesting in that, as far as I know, SHA 256, this is still irreversible. So if I tell you the number, you can't tell me what the file is. You can do a brute force search, but nothing else. It's a one-way function. It's got some nice properties. Suppose he's working on the assignment, which is due at Sunday midnight, and he can't submit it, but he wants to convince me that he's finished. He could send me the SHA 256 hash of his assignment as of Sunday midnight, and that's irrefutable proof that he's got those files at that time, assuming he can get the hash to me. So if he can send me just 256 bits, doesn't matter if we're talking about 10 gigabytes of files, he's given me incontrovertible proof that he's got those files in that state at that time. Then he can come in Monday, give me the 10 gigabytes of files, I can hash them. Ah, it's the same as the hash you texted me or whatever, and we've got proof. You had those files at Sunday midnight. It's an interesting time we live in. But this is sort of a possibility. Well, I guess it's these things have existed since you guys were born. When I was your age, these things were just were shiny and new, and it was very exciting. There we go. All right, how do we turn that into code? Here's a plagiarism detection. Maybe it isn't. I thought I had it. Oh. All right. Sorry, just bear with me while I grab the one from the website. That would explain what I'm doing wrong. This would be comp2041. This time for sure. Oh, there we go. So there's my solution for an order n approach. You can read this at your leisure, but I go through all the files in the directory. I apply those substitutions we saw last week that do things like remove comments, change all the identifiers to Andrew, and sort it. So even if they've reordered the code, obtain the MD5 sum of that for each file, sort all the MD5 sums, run them through unique, telling unique only look at the first 32 characters, which are the hash, and tell me about repeated ones. Yep.
So wouldn't these MD5 and SHA would have avalanche properties, so even if there's a small change, it would change?
Yes, they would. So I've got to remove any small changes in those substitutions, or this method falls down. So yeah, it's an all or nothing method. So it's actually not the best way to attack this problem in general, but it is the best way to attack a lot of other problems. So it's sort of showing it to you, with the caveat that MD5 is sort of obsolete, and you should substitute in something else there probably. Actually, for this purpose, you don't care. Everything's under your control here. It's not perfect though. There is a chance that the two files will be different and have the same MD5 sum. Very small chance. You can research how small. All right. Anyway, just you can go and read about that and Google and read some more. You really should if you're not on top of this stuff. It's really quite interesting. We'll come back to it. I think we're going to do for the first assignment. I think we're going to get you to implement Git. So you'll come back to MD5 sums there. Well, perhaps not all of Git, maybe a subset. All right. Oh, I don't want that. Where am I? Here I am. No. All right. I better keep moving. So that's all we're going to tell you about shell. Saying, is that all there is? Now, we'll come up across a few more useful things about shell. We're going to see a lot more about regular expression, and that will come back into using egrep or sed in shell. And there's lots of other stuff in shell that there are useful tricks and so on. But if you know the basics, you can Google, you can read Stack Overflow and so on. So the aim of the first couple of weeks was just to get you sort of up to a minimal speed in shell, where you can expand in directions as you need. And it's time to expand your knowledge in a completely different direction. Perl. This language, since I've started teaching it, it's actually become a little less important, but I'm still very, very keen on letting you all see Perl. Why has it become less important? I guess the main reason would be Python in particular. Python has grown and expanded, and there are many tasks that a decade or so ago where you would have said, oh, Perl's the one for this. Python, you might say these days, is more likely to be people's choice. Still very widely available and very widely used. Any general purpose computer will have Perl available on it. Huge range of software packages out there. Python's matched and exceeded it for scientific-y sort of things, data mining, anything related to science, stats. There's more for Python these days than for Perl. But for more system-y, webby, databases things, Perl still has a very rich libraries that compare to any language. It's been a very influential language, so it's important for you to understand the past. So it's very good that you see Perl in that respect. Yeah, why do I love showing it to students? Well, in the end, you can decide whether you think it's a positive or negative lesson about design. But it's such a different direction in design, language design, that I think it's important that any computer science graduate sees it as one direction. Even if you reject that direction. So when I was an undergraduate, the view was, and that's still pretty much a prevailing view, that if you wanted to build a computer language, you had to have a sort of a unifying theme to the semantics, to the meaning. You had to have, keep things simple and elegant for a couple of reasons. So there's the person implementing the language, either writing an interpreter or compiler for the language. They have to know what, for every given program, it'll do. If they're compiling it to machine code, they need to know what machine code to produce, or if it's an interpreter, what behavior to produce. So if the semantics, the meaning of a particular program are confusing and hard, it'll be hard for the implementer. There might be bugs in the implementation. The same applies, of course, to someone reading the program. And the other area, and it's perhaps its steadily growing importance, is proving things about programs. So his heart's not doing very well. He needs to have a pacemaker, a medical device implanted to help his heart. You wouldn't know it. He looks attractive and young, but still his heart needs this medical device. It doesn't have much code in it, but if there's a bug in the code, he dies, and we don't want that. So what do? You could do a lot of testing. I guess you could put the device in 10,000 people and for 10 years and see what happens. All right, no, that's not a good idea, is it at all? We can't do that sort of testing. So in that sort of circumstance, we often resort to verification, proving mathematical properties. And we've got a world-leading research team in the computer science building there who've proved properties of a microkernel, proved it's secure. If you don't have simple semantics, that sort of proof is incredibly difficult. I've never heard of anyone trying to prove anything with Perl. The guys on level 3 proved these things with C, but even there they had to restrict the subset of C. They effectively had to say to the programmers, you can't do that, you've only got to use these parts of C or we can't prove that this operating system is correct. So Larry Wall's thought was, no, I heard all of this as an undergraduate, but I've done a lot of programming. I want my programming language that's got everything in it that I want. Any feature I want, I'm shoving in this language. I like this stuff from Shell, shove it in the language. Yeah, this stuff from C is pretty good, push it in the language. That little bit of Fortran, yep, that bit of awk, that bit of Shell, oh, I like Shell, a bit more Shell, push it into the language. And with the syntax, he says, not, you've got to do this one way. If there's any, if it's more if the programmer writes this, what sort of meaning's useful to attach to that? And I'll just attach some meaning. The end result is it's an incredibly powerful language and you can write things very concisely. And this is one reason I want to show it to you. It's one place Python definitely has not replaced it, nor is anything else. If you want to write a program on the command line, Perl is brilliant for that. So there are tasks that don't fit into Unix filters, not quite work with sed, that are great in Perl on the command line. There was an earlier Unix program called awk. It's still around, but Perl has just destroyed it. I mean, awk was useful for pushing stuff on the command line, just gone with Perl. Right, one consequence of Perl's semantics is people write in subsets of it. So if you've done, say, you've done Comp 9021 with Eric Martin, in just 12 weeks, Eric will have shown you most of Python. And if you keep Python programming, by the time you've been programming a year or two, you'll be using pretty much all the language. Lots of Perl programmers just learn a subset and never bother with the rest of the language. They learn a subset for writing useful things and just live in that small subset. And that's what we're going to do in this course, is just show you a useful subset. All right, I've said you can write incredibly useful programs just on the command line. I didn't say they were readable. I definitely didn't say they were readable. So readability can be an issue with Perl. Undisciplined Perl is worse than undisciplined C. It's impossible to read. Doesn't always matter. Some of the shell scripting you'll discover you'll write a shell script which you'll use for one day for an hour and then that'll be it. Same applies to some Perl programming. It's use once and throw away. Readability then is it's of limited importance. You've got to establish the program does what it says, what you want, but after that, it's gone. Perl compilers have never really worked, and the Perl implementers have given up on compiling Perl. So it doesn't get translated to machine code. Instead, it gets interpreted in one way or another. The consequence is a loss of speed. Anything between a factor of 2 and 10, I'd say, compared to C, can be worse. A factor of 2 to 10 would be typical. I'm actually surprised at how efficient Perl is. It's still typically faster than Python. One thing that's starting to bite in this area, by the way, is power consumption. People are caring about that more and more as more and more stuff has run off batteries, and those battery technologists they're just getting nowhere compared to people building CPUs, really. They really need to take a... Moore's law just does not exist for batteries. So there's a high power consumption there. That would explain why you don't see a lot of Perl on phones, for example. Though it does have a modest footprint. If you're trying to get, code, I mentioned that I think my remote control for my TV runs shell, and it's not actually a lot of code to get shell scripts into a device. We're talking kilobytes. Yeah, maybe a megabyte or two. Perl's, well, less than a megabyte, but Perl, it's not so much worse. You can, and people sometimes do put Perl on pretty small devices. Other languages like Python, people just don't think about that. You're saying, show me some Perl soon. All right. If you've done Python, as most of you have done Python, you've seen the step between Python 2 and Python 3. And that was quite a big step for the Python community, and it was a couple of years before people said, oh, there's enough Python libraries out there. The things I want to use are in Python 3. I'll make the jump now. But there was a tool that did most of the translation for you. And if you wanted to be cute, you can write code that's in Python 3, runs in Python 2, or vice versa. So you can write Python agnostic code, more or less, with various tricks. Not a huge difference. So Perl went through a couple of early versions. Perl 5 appeared in the 90s. It became the widely used version of Perl, very popular. We're still using Perl 5 in this course. Perl 6, they started working on in about the year 2000. The first stable full implementation, version 1.0, came out a couple of years ago, but hardly anyone switched to it. So if you go on CPAN, which is this wonderful site where people put software libraries in Perl, there are about 60,000 Perl 5 libraries. So that's what I mean when you say, you've got a problem. There's probably a Perl 5 library that solves it for you among those 60,000. Free, easily accessible, one command to install it on your machine. Perl 6, it's more like 1,000 libraries currently. So I can't see into the future, sadly. But at the moment, there's little serious adoption of Perl 6, so we're going to cover a subset of Perl 5. They are very different languages. There are some people who are saying that Perl 6 would have done better if they'd called it something other than Perl. Who knows? All right. Oh, there's a pile of books there. No one seems to want books these days, but it used to be that you'd program more. With Perl, you have the top book open beside you. But if people like books, there's a set of books. Yeah, let's switch to just running it for a second. I tend to use a .pl suffix for Perl. It's interpreted. The interpreter is a program called user bin Perl. We can use a hash bang line if we remember the bang. Let's do a hello world program. That's right. Hey, all right. So I could have run it. I could have invoked the interpreter directly and said run it like that. Or I could have run. I can say to Perl -e says this is a thing on the command line, and I can just put Perl on the command line then. Oh, how weird. What's happening there? The trouble is, all those characters are shell characters. If I want to put it on the command line, I have to put quotes around it. That is the annoying thing about the command line. Now it'll work. Okay. I'll show you more about the command line next week. All right. So what have we learned? Oh, a lot there. There's a print statement. Oh, no brackets. You can omit the brackets from function calls in Perl, if you wish. Should you omit the brackets? I tend to do it for built-in functions and not for my own, just because I think that makes it easier to read the program. Sorry, let's go down to a slide. We'll come back to warnings. Syntax. So Perl and Python, same niche. But they're so different in the semantics, how they attach meaning to expressions in particular. So Perl attaches meaning to variables based on a character preceding the variable. And you'll see a slight resemblance to the shell because you flag a scalar variable, a simple variable with a dollar. It has two sorts of arrays marked with ats and percents. And you mark code with an ampersand. The usual term for this is a sigil. But you've just got to focus on that character. Sorry, let's go to... Let's try setting a variable. Oh, I know what we can do. Here's your first pleasant surprise. Larry Wall loved shell scripting, interpolating variable values into strings in shell scripts. So he says, I'm going to have that in my language. You're saying Python's got that. Python's got that because Guido had seen it in Perl, and other people had seen it in Perl. So you can do that. Let's try running that. Write it, run it. Oh no. Can't modify constant item in scalar assignment. And this is me not listening to myself. Every use of a simple variable has to be preceded by a dollar. You're saying, but that's different to shell. Yes. In shell, dollar means get the variable value. In Perl, dollar means this is a simple variable, a scalar variable. There we go. What was it talking about trying to modify a constant item? It's this. You're saying, what? There's no quotes around that string. You can't do that in Java, Perl, Python, C, C++, and a pile of other languages that I'm not going to list. What sort of language designer lets you have a string without quotes around it? This is Larry's philosophy. He thinks, well, there's a word there, but there's no dollar in front of it to say it's a variable, no at to say it's an array. There's no sigil of any sort to say what it is. What will I do with it? We'll just be like the shell. We'll just assume the program is too lazy to quote a variable. Is that a good idea? Yeah. Pluses and minuses. All right. Let's compute something. Sorry, bear with me for a second. Trying to remember Pythagoras' theorem. It's x squared plus y squared. That looks pretty good. You're saying, Andrew, what the hell is that? Two angle brackets and stood in? All right, so you remember I said there was some interesting syntactic choice in regular expressions and in the shell, which perhaps we can forgive them because of these things being designed early on in the development of computer languages. This takes it further. That is a function call. The equivalent function in C would be fgets, so that would be read a line from standard input. And in Python, of course, it's read line. So that reads a line, puts it in X, reads a line, puts it in Y. Let's try it out. Oh, let's write the file and try it out. No. That wasn't deliberate, sorry. It's a good example, though. You'll make the same mistake. You don't have to feel bad about it. I've been writing Perl programs for a while and I forgot that. Let's try again. All right. Who knows their Pythagorean triads? If a triangle has right triangle sides, shorter sides are 3 and 4. You sure? Oh, I forgot the new line. Let me add the new line. Lovely. Yeah, what did I learn there? No declaration of variables. So it's like shell. You don't declare the variables. There are more types there, but the dollar indicates the type of the variable. So you indicate the type of the variable every time you use it. She's saying, Andrew, does that mean I can have two variables of the same name but different types? It doesn't mean you can. It doesn't mean you should. So you can't do that in C. You can't have int x, double x, because then you just say x, and GCC doesn't know which one you're talking about. But you can in Perl. You can have an array x and a scalar x, and you can tell this is a scalar x because it's got a dollar in front of it. Types. So I did arithmetic here, but I didn't do any type conversion. Python programs will be saying, where's your converting the the string to an int. C programmers will be saying the same. Larry doesn't bother about that sort of thing. You put a string in a numeric operation, as long as it looks like a number, he's happy to go ahead. There is a question that you'll meet every time you meet a read line routine in any language. What does it do with the terminating characters of the line? On Linux, the new line character. Does it include it or not? It's a design decision. So it's always good to ask what design decision has been made. So let's find out. Let me show you. You're going to be doing a lot of debugging in Perl. You'll be writing out variables. The natural thing to do is just write out the variable. But that's not so good because you can't see the white space if there's white space starting or finishing the variable. So it's best to write out some printing characters, the value of the variable, and then some more printing characters. Those characters can be anything you like, but I've just gone with a couple of ats. Oh, is that a good choice? No, that's not a good choice. Let's not do that. That won't work. We'll come to why that doesn't work shortly. Exclamation marks are safe. Oh. There we go. Let's run the program. Enter X, enter Y. That's what I wanted to show you. The new line is there. So I shoved a couple of strings with new line in there. All right. Let's see if we can push things a bit. Whoa. Oh, no, yep. What is that number? Square root of 36 plus 49, I assume. So we give Perl arithmetic strings and it makes the best use of it. Try that. Put something in that just isn't a number. What did it take? What happened with Y there? Yeah, I'll make it obvious. I'll get rid of the junk from X. Oh, I can do X like that. So Y has been taken as 0. All right, that's starting to seem a bit worrying, isn't it? It means if I get random strings in my arithmetic, they'll just get taken as 0. What happened there? I misspelt Y as YY. Variable is not defined. So Perl goes ahead and takes it to be 0. That's starting to seem like a very bad idea. Every time I make a typing mistake, I just get a variable containing 0. It's the same as the shell. But if you want to write significant programs, that's a bad idea. Let me introduce you to something that probably should be the default. You're saying, that's bad, Andrew. I don't want to use a language where the defaults aren't right. You've been using GCCs or CLang probably, and the defaults certainly aren't right there. So I'm not sure you can hold it against Perl. All right, so every Perl program you run should specify this flag or this option. There are other ways to specify it, which says I want to be warned about things that look like errors in my program. How can the Perl implementation know that there's a problem with YY? All right, so okay, right, you could do a data flow analysis and tell me it's not initialized. All right, let's add another one. How can the Perl implementation know there's an issue with Z, probably? Why would the Perl implementation be worried about Z there? It is being initialized, but only appears once. So a variable appearing once in a program seems a bit silly. There is actually a way you can usefully do this in Perl for some things, but you probably shouldn't. It's a pretty clear sign of some sort of mistake by the programmer. So -W warns you if a variable appears once. It'll also warn me if things going into arithmetic aren't numeric. I'm going to be saying this multiple times, but let me start saying this now. A, you turn on the -W flag for every program in Perl you write. B, if there's a warning, you fix it. You don't say, Andrew, my Perl's great, can I turn off the -W flag? Or can the tutor ignore that? A, your Perl probably isn't great, but if you're in the 1% of cases where your Perl's okay and the -W flag is too enthusiastic, still fix it. All right, let's implement my favorite game. You're saying we can do a computer game in the couple of minutes before we have a break? Yes, we can. All right, so it's perhaps not massive multiplayer online and there are no graphics. My favorite game is Snap. And we want a program to say Snap when two numbers are entered. How are we going to do this? While true? What's true? Yeah, we better come back to that. Oh, actually, no, we'll make it. I want to make it just number. Oh, no, we'll start off with numbers, then we'll change it. That's a good idea. Take you through the operators. Exit status, which you're now familiar with the purpose for. Let's try it out. Oh, no, we're missing a bit of code, aren't we? Oh, so close. Wasn't that nice? Snap. It does have a bug in it. A bit hard to fix with numbers, actually. Oh. How do you fix that? Actually, Perl's. Try doing this in C. Can you do that in C? Can you say, has a value been assigned to that variable? No, you can't. Interesting. But in Perl, you can say, because variables start out with an undefined value, which is a first-class thing in the language, you can say, has this variable been defined? Nice. So what can we see there? C syntax, which is not so different to Java syntax or C++ syntax, but is different to Python syntax. Though a while loop it carries across. Notion of truth values, well, we're not quite sure. There's no Boolean type in Perl, so it's like C in that respect, though the truth values are different slightly. In C, does the last statement in a block have to have a semicolon? You sure? 100% sure? Yes, it does. In C, semicolon is a statement terminator. Every statement's got that. In Perl, semicolon is a statement separator. You only have to have it between statements. It's an interesting difference. You're saying, do I care? Not next week's lab exercise, but eventually you will. All right. So we want to make this take strings. All right. Words. We'll go with words. You're missing the best bit. Ah. Double equals doesn't want to do compare two words. And this is where this difference in semantics between, say, Python and Perl comes to the fore. In Python, double equals can take any type on either side and do something sensible. That's just not possible in C. So double equals in Python can say, oh, int on this side, numeric comparison. Float on this side, int on this side, I'll do a conversion comparison. String on this side, I'll do the equivalent of strucum. It's not a possibility for a Perl implementation, so you have to say what sort of comparison you want to do. Numeric comparison, string comparison, sorry, no array comparisons. So that's EQ is, oh wait, that comes from shell, from test. Just without the dash. So EQ gives you the equivalent of strucump in C. To compare two strings. Hey, write the file, Andrew, sorry. It's been a long day. Huh, all right. All right, let's have a break. I've talked for too much. I'll show you some more interesting things about Perl. We'll make a gigabyte string when you come back from 5 minutes break.
Can I borrow a second?
You can borrow a second, yes.
I'm just wondering how can you run the Perl program directly on the command line?
Perl space file. Oh, you want to run it in the, you want to put something here like, something like that.
I mean, during the lecture, I saw you just put the
Like that? Like
the
that?
program name.
Oh,
Like unlike we put dot slash, you can directly run it.
got a hashbang line, which modded it. Hashbang user bin Perl minus W. Yeah, dot slash, oh, have you chmodded it though? So you have to make sure there's execute permission on it.
Yeah, I think it is, but I can only run like in this way. What if I try?
Oh, you're without the dot. You have to have the dot directory in your path. Oh, let's use printf.
Sorry. I'm just wondering how.
Add dot to your path. Yep.
So that's the only way.
And sorry, no. If you do,
Yeah.
don't let me break your lovely computer.
Oh. Okay, got it. I got it. Thank you.
Can I ask, like, why do like when this line there will change line immediately, and when I use the y equal to something else, and it
Because
was,
there's a new line read. Y contains a new line, so when it doesn't read, it reads in the new line as well. So it prints the new line as well.
sorry, you say in where y is getting here.
Yeah.
Oh,
When you read the line, if gets a new line, read line in Python gets a new line, so does this
I
there.
see. Thank you.
All right, we're on. On screen. Read the program. What can I see there? There are a couple of things we haven't seen before. The access to an argument is through a special variable called argv in capitals. So that's the equivalent of the second argument to main in C or sys.argv in Python. But there's a difference to both C and Python there. What's in argv0 in C and Python? Program name. Sorry, Larry decided he didn't like that. I wanted to be different. I wish he hadn't, but he did. So argv0 in Perl is your first command line argument. Where is the program name? Special variable 0, I'm afraid, just like shell. Why? I don't know. As I said, it's interesting you seeing all these design decisions, even if you don't end up deciding that they were good design decisions. Dot. That's string concatenation. So that would be plus in Python or strucat in C. That says, get this string and append it to that string. And if you're coming from C, this is great. No more strulen, malloc, worry about buffer overflow. You just say, concatenate these strings together for me. So this makes strings of the word Andrew. And try it out. We'll give it the argument 4. Oh, I got quite a lot of Andrews. Wait a minute. I'll print out a new line just for you. Let's run the loop 10 times. Whoa, that's a lot of Andrews. That's a 6 kilobyte string. Wait, all right. I think I'm going to have to use more here now. How many Oh, I just made a 6 megabyte string. 6 megabytes of Andrew. Note again, no mallocs. Well, let's go a bit further. We're doubling every time, so let's try 30. Oh, it's thinking about it, but it did it. How big was the string? All right, I need commas, don't I? So that's 6 characters. Oh, I just made a 6 gigabyte string. All of Andrews. All right, so we won't print it all out. But that's printing out a line that's got 6 billion characters on it. That's all good. Actually, we'll try going a bit further. We'll go to 32. We'll make a 24 gigabyte string. Oh, maybe that was a bad idea. Oh. Maybe that was a bad idea. I think I only get 16 gigabytes of RAM for this. All right, I'll stop it. So there's a couple of things here. This really affects how you program. So if you need tight control of memory, and often you do, because often it's not raw CPU, but it's the caching that kills you if you're trying to get high speed. You don't have that in Perl. But the other thing we want is no malloc bugs. Malloc memory allocations, incredibly common source of bugs and security holes. If we can take that away from the programmer and shift it into the language in a hopefully correct implementation, suddenly there's a whole class of bugs and security holes gone. Yeah, It's an interesting thought. All right. What now? I better show you. It's a good question. What do I want to show you? Let me check the lecture slides. I think I want to show you more access to arguments. We'll come back to dollar underscore. All right, operators. Yeah, it's best to review them. All right. The arithmetic and logical operators are similar to C. There's a couple of exceptions, well, a couple of additions. But we're a bit at the mercy here. Guido, when he did Python, decided he didn't like some things about C. Larry, when he did Perl, didn't like some things about C. So they changed a couple of things. So if you've learnt C or Python, you're coming to Perl, you've got to deal with these changes. Neither of them really should. So Guido didn't like and an or. So it's the C and an or, not the, well, it's not quite true, is it? You've got both in Perl. Interesting. And these string comparison operators, which you're familiar with from the shell test operator, now come into Perl. Dot string concatenation. Yeah. Oh. Can I go back one slide? I'm not sure if I can. Oh, I can. CMP. We'll come back to that one. It's an equivalent to strucump as an operator. Equal greater than, oh. It's like strucump but for numbers. And we'll come to why that's needed. So have you done some C programming? If you've done C programming, you know strucump's weird. It returns, you give it two strings to compare, and it returns negative if they're in order, 0 if they're equal, and 1 if they're out of order, or vice versa, I never remember. You do get manual entries in the exam. The less than equals greater than does the same thing for numbers, which is handy when you're sorting numbers. And we'll see why you need it in a later lecture. Good question. Very good question. They're just the sort of uses you expect. You'll learn those by playing with them. Truth values. All right, those of you who are C programmers, what are the truth values exactly in C? Or more precisely, what's false? It's easier to say what's false in C. So what's false in C? An integer 0? Is a floating point 0 false in C? Oh. See, you're disappointing me here. I imagine you all coming to this fine university and going out and being the sort of people the programming teams turns to when they want questions like that answered. So you've still got a bit of time before you graduate. You can fulfill my expectations. What else in C is false? 0, 0.0. Anything else? Null pointer. I think that covers it in C. Anything else in C? All right. Is an empty string in C false? It's true. In Perl, the empty string and 0 is false. Everything else is true, and there's some subtle end cases that will bite you if you're not careful. a 0.0 string is false, but a 0 string is, sorry, a 0.0 string is true and a 0 string is false. The end is you try not to rely on these cases. Let's check this out. You're saying, I'm not clear about this. What you're going to do is, I don't know about tonight, but in the next few days, you're going to write a Perl program and play with these things yourselves and see if you can understand them. I know what to do. I want to try this out. I want to show you something. Maybe a helpful example. We'll read a word. Lovely. That's the example I wanted. This will be informative. See, aren't you glad you're not mathematicians and you can write code and discover things? Mathematicians just have to rely on logic and lemmas and proofs. We can actually just execute things. It's so much easier. You can be a mathematician as well if you want. I won't stop you. All right. Oh, I didn't type anything. But what the angle brackets return is the line and the new line. So it's not an empty string, so it's true in Perl. So I could try something like this. That would solve my problem. But let me introduce you to my favorite function in Perl and perhaps any language ever, which will remove a new line if it is present on the end of a string. You're saying, Andrew, Python's got trim, but it doesn't have such a good name. The function is chomp. I mean, this admittedly applies in any language. You read in a string, you always have to say, what do I want to do with the new line I've got? And often you want to remove it. So a good programmer is always thinking about what to do with the new line. But it's so easy. Larry's thing is making it easier for you to be a good programmer. So whenever you do input in Perl, you should be saying, do I need the new line? Most of the time you don't. You should be just saying chomp, the variable, and remove the new line. Hey. There we go. So once I remove the new line, I've got an empty string if there were no characters on the line, and that's false. You're saying, shouldn't you make that explicit? Yeah, I certainly wouldn't criticize you for making that explicit. Like that. I'm happy with that. Wouldn't criticize you for that. So in C, that would be an infinite loop. Is that legal C? While string? You're a good C programmer, is it? Is it? Wrong answer. Here, I'll give you a shot. Is that legal C? Yes, yes it is. Well answered. So in Perl, that while loop is never executed. In C, it's an infinite loop. Just a curiosity for you. Well, it's useful to. It's not a programming pattern you're going to use, but obviously it's a way of understanding the semantics, making sure you're clear about the semantics. So when I was talking about you writing little programs, so you can write things like this. Not a while loop, that would be silly. Let's just go with an if. And we can be Yoda. This is what I talked about when you're debugging. You can't just, when you're trying to debugging, it's writing it out, but you can't see the white space. You've got to put something there so you can see what the white space is. My usual trick is to just put single quotes have no meaning inside a double quoted string. And there you can see it's writing out true is 0 new line. But I get rid of the new line. It's false. You can play with those things. Just giving you an indication of the territory you can map out. Oh, there's the usual shortcuts from C. Plus equals, minus equals, times equals. And if you come from Python, there's also plus, plus, and minus, minus, like C. And it has both the C operators and the Python ones. So and or and double ampersand and double bar are there with different precedences. We'll see in a little while why it's nice having two different ands. Now some people would say, what? You put two and operators in the language. Who does that? Larry did, and you can get a feeling for the consequences. There we go. There's my slide. It lets you write some Perl idioms that you can't, because of the precedence, you can't write with double bar. You can bracket them, of course, but you can write with or. It saves you writing two characters. So he's added operators to the languages to let you avoid typing a couple of brackets. Is that a good idea? We should try out some of these as programs and things. Yeah, we've got a little bit of time. Don't worry, we're going to come back and consolidate much of this in Thursday's lecture. Let's print our arguments. Let's be C programmers. Or C++ or Java, I guess. For $I equals 0, $I less than... Oh, how many arguments? Two ways to write this. Actually, well, no, we'll go the weird way first. For any array, $array is the index of the last thing in the array. Let's run the program and make sure I've got the correct syntax. No, I don't. What have I done wrong? Oh, thank you. Oh, well, it's not quite echo, but anyway, that's okay. All right, what do we notice there? argv we don't declare, but it's got our arguments in it. Now I said @ was the special symbol for array, but that's when you're talking about the whole array. If you want to access an individual array element, it's dollar and square brackets. Sounds awful, but it works. So that's a C-style for loop. You're not forbidden to write these, but you should try to avoid them in Perl. There's a better way to write this in Perl. And your Python programs will be saying, oh, this looks a bit like Python. Yes, it does. So you can say, like shell. You can say for variable in this list of values, just like shell. Oh. We'll just do it with A. And we'll make it into the proper echo. So that'll print all the arguments on one line. All right, so you can use the C-style for loop, but I recommend you don't. Switch over, you're learning Perl, get into there's no point just trying to stay writing C in Perl if you know C. Switch over to really trying to write Perl, idiomatic Perl. So that's the for loop you should be using for most of your loops where a for loop's appropriate. So that says effectively execute over this array, making A in turn a value from the array. Let's be. Oh, I thought you could do that. That's disappointing. Oh, you can, yeah. That's right. It's not needed there, it's the last value, isn't it? So summing our arguments. Notice no type conversion, looping over the arguments. You can reduce that to one line of code if you want. I won't. What did I just do? In a string, I put the name of an array variable. Note the @ sigil. Perl went through that string, said, oh, there's an @ there. What follows better be an array name. I'll interpolate the values of the array. Yeah. What's useful here, though? I can interpolate them with nothing between them, commas between them. Larry decided the most useful way to interpolate an array into a string is put spaces between them. So that's what it does. So you want to write out in the whole array? No for loop. Nice for debugging. Just bang, away you go. So that's the same program as one before. There is an issue. What if I really want to write out an @ You're saying, whoever wants to write out an @ What are ats used for? Let me show you. Let's suppose we're writing out your email address. Please don't email that address. I'm not sure if it's a real address, but unconnected with this class. Oh, look what happened there. At least we're getting a -w warning, but we attempt to write out an email address in a string, and Perl's saying, oh, I can't interpret an array called Gmail. It'd be worse if it could. Are you saying, can I backslash it, Andrew? I think you can. Look at that, that works. What about shell programming? You go to single quotes. Python programmers are saying, wait, single quotes are different to double quotes? More the question to your Python programmers is, why aren't they different? What's the point of having double quotes and single quotes if they're the same, exactly the same? Who does that? Oh. So between single quotes, sorry, your backslash n doesn't get interpreted. It's a little tricky, isn't it? All right, something to remember. I'm just going to show you the flavour of a couple of things. We're going to come back. I just want you to know they exist. Then we're going to come back and work through some examples. So this is alerting you to these things. One is regular expressions are embedded in Perl. One is, like this, I can say, replace this regular expression in this string. What do we do? I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, we'll replace the A and the T with dashes. That'll do. Everywhere they occur in the string. So don't freak out, we're going to come back to this, but regular expressions embedded right into the language syntax. For example, in Python, regular expressions are there in the standard libraries. You import RE, you call re.sub, you can do these things. No, here they're in the language syntax. Equals tilde says basically variable on my left, regular expression operation on my right, apply it. Try that out. We'll write the file and try it out. Oh. Embedded in the language. Interesting. What about in, say, an if statement? You can say something like this. That does a regular expression match against the string. And executes the body of the if statement if the regular expression matches whatever string's in the variable. Nice, really nice. Okay. I'll show you one, we'll come back to this. One more thing. TR, you remember TR? Built into there. You remember I have to send email like this a lot. This will get it into the appropriate case. TR built into the language. You're saying is cut built into the language? Yeah, cut's there too. Sort, yeah. Unique? Yeah, I don't know. Oh, well, you can do unique pretty easily. Now, next week's lab needs file operations. So again, don't freak out. I'm going to show you some simple file operations in CP, but we're going to go through all of this stuff and reinforce it. Oh, I need a file name. Oh, we still got the Harry Potters. Oh, good. Actually. All right. No, that's not good, sorry. You can do that, but that's not a good idea. We'll do it the good way. 3 arguments. There's a 2-argument form to open in Perl, which you shouldn't use because it creates a ridiculous number of security holes. 3-argument form of open, very non-intuitive. The first argument is effectively a word I'm going to use to refer to the stream. You're saying, that's strange. I mean, open normally gives me back a value to refer to the stream. It's not how that's not the classic way of using open in Perl. You can ask Perl to do that. But classically you say, oh, here's the word I'm going to use to refer to the stream. Then you will say where you want to read or write by giving what looks like a shell I/O redirection. So I'm saying less than, that's read in shell. Then I give the file name. And now I can use angle brackets and get a line from the file. Ooh. What's gone wrong? The two things have gone wrong. I've misspelt the file name wrong. But more importantly, I've violated one of Andrew's rules for making your life happier. I'm going to give you several of these as we go through this course. But this is perhaps the most important. The sort of importance you should attach to this rule is sort of importance you should attach to other rules in life, like, don't go out with someone with more problems than you have. Similarly, in any programming language, not just Perl, when you make any sort of request to the operating system that there's any possibility of failure, check the return code. Now you might see in C, an assert put there if you really think this is always going to work. So from week 3, we now know the virtue of exiting with a non-zero exit status. Let's try that out. Open failed. Oh, I need a new line. We also now know the virtue of putting error messages on std. Let me show you how to do that. With a print statement, you can nominate a stream. It defaults to stodout, but stodair is there with the name of stodair. And type the right thing. All right. It's nice to put the program name in there. Larry's made that very easy. $0. If you're a C programmer, you're used to that being annoying and sticking in a global variable or something like that if you want to write error messages outside main. You don't have that problem in Perl because $0 is global. And a good programmer would say that maybe. Oh, let me show you another trick. Another special variable in Perl. You're saying, oh no, you mean Perl's like shell, it's got all these special variables. It's got so many more special variables than shell is the bad news. The good news is there's a cheat sheet in the exam. You don't have to memorize any special variables. I want to know if you can program in Perl, not have you memorized Perl's 28 special variables. Actually, there's more than 28. But the X mark variable, I think, look, it's got the reason the last request to the operating system failed. So if we do an open and it fails, we know that the exclamation mark variable will have why the open failed. It could say no permission or something like that. In this case, it just says no such file or directory. Let me show you something else. Larry wanted to encourage you to check all your system calls and give good error messages. We'll do it on 2 lines. So he made it possible to write this. And there are things not to like about Perl, but how can you not like this idiom? Open the file, or if you can't, die. And you give the message, it exits with a non-stereo exit status, printing the message onto there. Is this what you want 100% of the time? No, sometimes you want to do something else. Is this what you want 95% of the time? Yes, or more. Does this encourage lazy programmers to print out these check system calls and print out decent error messages? Yes. It also encourages people who are working under a deadline to produce a script that's going to be used once. You have to edit. You can just say or die and you get a generic message. So if you're sure the open's always going to work, or you don't have users or whatever, you'd say that, and you'll just get this message. Never leave a bare open there. Always have a check of some sort. Let's put back the good version. All right, how do we read a lot of lines? Well, I can do that. Oh, stopping. I need a stopping condition. I think this works. If not, $line break. I have initialized or assigned to it. But what I didn't remember is Larry didn't like the words break and continue. He changed them. You're thinking, why? Who would do that? It's the same in every language you have to learn. Why would you? What can you do? So he made break and continue last and next. Is that awful? Yeah, I think it is, but still, it's what you've got to live with. Oh, we've just written cat. Actually, we can simplify it a bit. There are better way. I probably should write it like this. The last version will break under